Hello again, Michael Ware with the Iowa Firearms Coalition. I got a special guest here today. John Crump is joining us. John's a journalist, an activist, podcaster, and he's writes at AmmoLand. I put a few articles on there myself. We've met before, but I hope to increase the depth of our relationship. So welcome, John. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me on.
I wanted to visit real quick with your help to explain what's going on with this recent 9-0 decision with the Supreme Court, and to line that out for people. What I want to do is give you a for instance as the viewer out there, and then John can help weigh in on what's going on, ramifications for the suit, and what that means for us out here in Joe Blow, United States American. Okay, so basically, for whatever reason you find yourself visited by the police, they tell you everything's fine, just chill, but we need you to go someplace and calm down, whether this is a dispute between a couple or whatever it may be. You find yourself gone, you come home, the next thing you know, you're looking around, all your firearms are gone. Well, wait a minute, I specifically asked if these things were going to happen and what was going on, and everybody told me it was okay, you were fine. And so I leave and I come back. Now I find out that my firearms have been confiscated, so that I go to the police department. Hey, Mr. Law Enforcement, can I get these back? Well, no, as a matter of fact, you can't. And so your firearms have been confiscated. You've basically been violated. And to top it off, you can't seem to get your possessions back. All of this without due process. And that's very important to understand. So that's kind of a parallel, if not the synopsis we're talking about in this case. So can you kind of line some of these things out for us, John, and help us understand?
Sure. Let's go ahead and talk about what happened in this case.
Okay, please.
Husband and wife were having some marital trouble after years and years of marriage. They were arguing, and the husband took an unloaded gun, stuck it on the table, and said, instead of arguing, why didn't you just kill me? He wasn't actually saying, I'm going to commit suicide, I'm going to hurt you. He just said, instead of arguing, why didn't you just kill me like that? The wife and him continued to fight. She went to a hotel for the night, and she couldn't get in touch with her husband. She kept on calling and calling. He wasn't picking up the phone. So she contacted 2 police officers to do a wellness check on her husband with her to make sure. So they go over there and they find him sitting on the back porch. He's totally calm, totally rational. And they said, hey, your wife told us what happened. Are you okay? He goes, yeah, I'm fine. We just got in a little fight, whatnot. And one of the officers, the senior officer, even said he seemed totally okay. He wasn't suicidal. The officers admit that he wasn't suicidal or anything like that. But they wanted him to go to the hospital just to get a mental evaluation, just to make sure everything was okay. And he's like, I really don't want to do that. And he finally agreed to on the agreement that they would not take his firearms, because he was worried about losing his guns, because he's heard a lot of people lose their guns if they go to the hospital to get checked out for mental issues. So what happened was he went to the hospital, and while he was at the hospital, the police, under the community caretaking guidelines, went in and seized his firearms. Now, we got to talk about what the community caretaking guidelines are. Basically, think about it this way. If you're a cop and you stop someone during a speeding ticket, and you walk up and you notice that they had a kilo of cocaine in the car or something, illegal, the community caretaking guideline says you can't ignore that. So this has nothing to do with what happened, but that's the guise that the police used to confiscate the firearms. So they confiscated the firearms. They lied to the wife. They lied to the husband, because they told the wife that the husband told them to take the guns. And she's like, well, if my husband said, take his guns, I guess, take his guns. They didn't leave him any receipt or anything to get back the firearms. So he goes down to the police station and demands his guns back. They tell him, no, you can't have them back. We took them under this, and they are now confiscated, and you are not due to get them back. You have no right to get them back. He sued, and it went up through the courts, and it finally reached the Supreme Court, where in a 9-0 decision, which is incredible, that never happens, They decided that the Community Caretaking Act does not apply to the home, and they cannot seize your firearms without due process. So that's what the decision says. A lot of people think that this might apply to red flag laws. It doesn't directly, because they put in there, this does not directly apply to red flag laws, but it does lay some of the foundations for red flag laws to be challenged in the future. The arguments that we know will work on the justices, it lays down. So even though it doesn't knock down red flag laws, it does give us kind of a game plan to attack red flag laws.
Okay, real quickly, unpack for us in one paragraph or less what a red flag law is, so that we can illustrate for people what we're really talking about here. Because I think that there are a lot of folks out there that have a cursory view of that at best, but don't really have the meat of that. Could offer that for us, will you?
Okay. A red flag law or an extreme risk protection order, each state is a little bit different. Some are more stringent than the other ones, but that basically allows like a family member or someone, a roommate or whatnot, in some cases a doctor, depending on what state, to go to the police and say, hey, I think this person's a danger to himself or others. What happens is it goes to a secret court where the gun owner is never aware that there's something going on against him, but they issue an extreme risk protection order, which gives the police the right to go in and take all the gun owner's firearms without due process. The gun owner has to then fight the guns back, and that can get very, very costly. So it's basically taking the guns and worrying about due process later.
I was considering that as you outlined how this worked, to have something where the police clearly, in a 9-0 decision, I think that this isn't a swipe at law enforcement. I'm very pro law enforcement. I'm sure every reasonable person is. But to have a couple of policemen go over and above their mandate or go outside their mandate, and for this person to have to go all the way to the Supreme Court to get a few guns back. I mean, I'm trying to fathom in my mind what the cost is associated with that. I mean, we're not just talking about passion or time, but that's an extremely costly endeavor to right an injustice that shouldn't have happened to begin with. That's a lot.
Yes, it is. It racks up into the hundreds of thousands, if not the millions of dollars.
Man, I'll tell you what, people overstepping their boundaries to begin with. Well, okay, so now that we understand a little bit about ERPO or red flag laws, excuse me, and what happened in this case, do you have a prediction that you should offer us, or what should we be looking for next, or what should we be prepared for as people who are Second Amendment advocates?
Right now, there is a bunch of cases winding their way through the court system. Although this lawsuit in this case does not address red flag laws directly, it does lay some of the groundwork, some of the arguments that can be used to challenge red flag laws. They were very specific. Alito was very specific to say that this case is not about red flag laws. Thomas, not so much. I think Thomas would have thrown in red flag laws if we could have got it. But Alito made specific arguments that this is not about red flag laws. But even though it's not about red flag laws, a lot of the arguments that the justices looked at and decided for the pro-gun side applies in red flag laws, like no due process.
Right. That's exactly
confiscation of firearms without due process. That's one of the things that it can be looked at to this case with red flag laws going forward.
That helps a lot, because, and I assume that that's the tie throughout is that we're going to go ahead and levy some sort of idea, judgment, punishment, or do something, give some act. And oh, by the way, all without due process on the part of the person whose possessions are being taken, and policy, judgment, infringement, whatever else being levied upon them. So that helps a lot. And I think all of our people should be paying close attention to this.
Yeah.
We have IFC is actually in a lawsuit right now where one of the local counties in Iowa sued us and another individual at the same time, or suing us rather, for the purposes of pushing back on the preemption law we have here, and also silencing us in terms of, I guess you'd call us a critic of them breaking the Iowa code and breaking the law. There's some absolutely mind-boggling lawsuits out there right now, but so we're involved in one as we speak. I would like, if you don't mind, to see if you could take a peek at that when you have some time. I'd like to have you back on again so you could visit with us about that. But I wanted to make this quick video with you. I'm glad you had the time to offer us. People can go to Crumpy, CRUMPY.com, and I'll put everything down below in the video so that people can chase the links and go see what you've got to say once you write more often. But John, again, thank you very much for taking a few minutes to come on with us today. Is there anything in parting that we need to know that we haven't covered real quick?
One thing I do want to make clear is Caniglia versus Strom wasn't a Second Amendment case. It was a Fourth and Fifth Amendment case. Yes. And with the red flag laws, we have to look past the Second Amendment argument and attack them on Fourth and Fifth Amendment, because that's the real strength of our argument to defeat red flag laws. It's not on the Second Amendment. I do think it violates the Second Amendment, but there is a massively stronger argument on Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights.
I agree with you 100%. I think that you're going to be interested in some of the information that I can send over to you regarding our case, because it's a clear violation of the Second Amendment. But what Monroe County has done to the Iowa Firearms Coalition and a local individual is they basically said, we don't want to hear it. And oh, by the way, in order for us to illustrate that we don't want to hear from you, we're going to silence you through other means. And that's clearly First Amendment issues right there.
Yeah, it definitely is First Amendment issues. It sounds like they might be trying to do like a slap lawsuit. We're just trying to like run up the bill on you guys.
Not only that, I mean, that probably is one thing that they may be considering doing to scare us. The other thing about this is when political subdivisions decide that they don't like some law, they really like to do things like this, to put it in front of a judge who may look at things differently and basically say, we don't like the law, we're going to roll the dice and see what happens in court. When you use the power of government against individuals and volunteer orgs and not-for-profits like us, I consider that an act of, well, it's tyranny.
Yeah,
I mean, it's absolutely despicable. So
and cowardliness. If
you better believe it.
Yeah, if your argument cannot stand up to the other side, maybe you should look at your argument. Maybe it's not as strong as what you think it is.
I agree. I do. Listen, we got to get moving here. I want to get this out to people so they can see it. Again, Crumpy.com, John Crump. I appreciate your time this morning, or excuse me, this afternoon. Come back and we'll visit again. And I thank everybody out there. Become an IFC member. Follow John and see what he's got to say. He's a good writer, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.